Overview of the FXSSI website. I do recommend that you guys bookmark this. It's the best Forex website in the world, in my opinion, and I've seen lots and lots of websites. So it's broken down in quite a nice dashboard where we have the news, obviously, as you can see, and the sentiment. Now, this is the key to what we're looking at, the QuasiDB. Some nice charts from TradingView, and you can put your opinion whether or not you think buy or sell there. Economic calendar and blog articles. These are good. These are very excellent articles to read if you've got any spare time. And so there's your tools at the bottom. So what you want to do, you want to create an account here. So you just authenticate on Twitter or Facebook or Google. I just do Twitter. Authorize app. And redirected. And so what the thing is that's of interest to us are the MT4 products. You can also look at all these other things as well. The forecasts are amazing. See how they can predict upward trend momentum for pound USD and things like that. And they can actually say whether or not they've been profited or at a loss, which is cool. It's all forecast based on things like the current ratio, and they use trading activity as well and look at the stop loss clusters. So that's one cool thing about it, is the forecasts, but we're really looking at the MT4 products. And then the key thing, what we do in the QuasiDB, we look at the stop loss clusters, and that comes with the Pro license. Essentially, they're liquidity zones. So it's what that means. SLC is stop loss cluster, and it shows where most market participants have placed the stop losses for their trades. The largest accumulations of these orders they're called clusters, and they're displayed by the SLC indicator on the chart. So these are historical stops. That's where they got stopped out. But yet, sometimes what we'll see is that they'll move them higher because no one wants a loss. They'd rather just move their stops higher. But what they don't realize is that they're forming a majority, a dumb majority, and they think that they're being clever by trying to outsmart the market by moving their stop, but they don't realize that everyone else is doing it. And by when everyone else does it, it just makes price gravitate towards that liquidity. And what's happening now with the Australian dollar, US dollar, is that they've moved them up higher and higher, and they've got so large now. There's the largest SLC I've ever seen. So I think that's possibly going to get rated today. So that's why the SLCs are really good. And this is just a quick video on that. I'm going to make a series of videos about the other products that they have. So as you can see, that's what happens. They think of it like a magnet. We can put a magnet emoji there, and essentially that's where they had their stops. So what happens? Takes that liquidity up, grabs that, puts them into a false sense of security. Look, it's going to fall, but no, because they've got their stops. This is where the majority have theirs. The majority get targeted. The minority are fine. The 20%, they're successful. It's the 80%, the dumb herd, they get targeted and they get preyed upon, and then they go broke, and then it's despair. After the fear and despair, then we have a cyclical, emotional result, a consequence of that. And now once they've been absolutely destroyed, then price will come down, and then it does the reverse. And the majority get destroyed, and then that's the liquidity taken. So people can look at charts and think, supply and demand, support, resistance, but it could actually just be liquidity hunts. And the technicals do come into it, but they can fool you, and that's the trouble. Is that everyone looks at that, think, oh, that's going to be a resistance, then that's obviously it's going to be a catch-22 situation where it could actually be a good resistance, but if everyone else thinks that, then it's going to get targeted. So you want to try and think outside the box and think like the minority. This week we had the Euro USD long signal, and I was actually very happy that it didn't trigger, because I didn't think it was going to go up, and I've been trading for 10 years, and it just goes to show why you should look at the sentiment, because 85% of retail traders were short. So what happens? the price is going to go up to punish them. So I can tell you about how to trade with the SLC indicator. It's essentially targets. That's what we use. We can know the direction, and we know where likely probabilities are of the size as well. Obviously, the larger the size, the more attractive it is. Yeah, so we determine the entry or exit point. So that would be the pit, the fear, despair, and that's where their stops would finally be targeted and would hit a terminal. If you think of it like a train, that's reached its destination. It's destroyed so many people and taken so much money, and it can come down and then punish those guys. So that's what we really use for determining the exit entry point. So if we were to target that, then we could simply sell at that point. That once everyone's been destroyed, then that would be a good entry point. You see how it works? So where we'd enter at where they're at the most pained, and would exit when they enter. So yeah, like if it's a bit of a, you've got to think it's a bit out of the box, but it's not too bad. So you can set the take profit there, and you know that obviously that because the majority are often wrong, that's going to be a good TP, especially if it comes all the way down there. I mean, it looks like it's going to fall, right? And it did, and then that's like a trap. That's the key, you see, because is it really a trap, or is it just a liquidity fake out, and it wants to grab that because it knows that there's stops up here. Yeah, so pretty horrible. What else? Yeah, you can get the good entries and exit points as well. It's all worth having a look at this website, and yeah, so that's what will happen. What we'll see, we'll just see sometimes on FX pairs, we'll see a wick just on the SLC, and if you didn't have visibility of the SLCs, you wouldn't know what was going on here, but it was actually a liquidity probe, and it takes the stops, and so it bounces. Because you could theorize it's going to come up anyway. It depends on what the instrument is, but it looks like it's coming down, and it's hit the fear, despair zone, and then they get crushed. Their liquidity gets taken, they get stopped out, they get punished, and then they get back in line, and up it comes. So it's really, really cruel. But having visibility of this will infinitely improve your trading experience, because you've had to have visibility of what the what the big guys, the big boys, like the sharks and the wolves, they can see where your stops are. And so obviously if you're like one of those guys, then you're not going to be in that crowd. You're going to be in the smart minority. Yes, just have a look at this. It's really good. I'm going to make a series of videos on the different products, but SLCs are fantastic. So you can see how where we can see the stop loss clustered there at that point. So you would target that, and then you would get out. You wouldn't want to be particularly too greedy. I mean, that's quite a nice move. It's probably 80 pips or so. But that's good for a day. That's a good day's trade. So you know where the take profit is, and your stop loss would be above where the retail guys have got their stops, because that's like a magnet, right? So you'd have a visibility of where their stops were, but you just have it above. And interestingly and bizarrely, which was quite weird, but the retail have their stops on round numbers. So avoid doing that. Don't do that, because that's really foolish, because they know that the stops, you guys, well, not you guys, but retail traders have their stops at round numbers. So you'd always put your stop loss above where they have their stops, you see? So we'd enter there, take profit at that liquidity area, and then we'll get out. And the way that we do it in QuasiDB, we don't overtrade. We try and trade Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we'll reap the rewards for those 3 days, and then have Thursday, Friday off just to watch and monitor. And that's been proved to be very successful in our signals. So you don't overtrade, just have a nice simple TP, know where your stop loss is. Admittedly, that R is actually it's not that great. It's like a 1-to-1 R, but because we know the direction, it proves to be more successful than not, especially if you know where their stops are and how it works, because the market is very cruel, and it could just be a liquidity probe on both sides. Lots and lots of stuff. I'll talk about the order book next, and Yeah, so they're your bad spots for your SLC. You wouldn't have your stops where they have theirs. That would just be silly because that's the target, and that's a target. So you'd have it up there, or you'd have it down there. So the order book's fantastic. And just before I wrap up the video, is that don't forget, if you are interested in any of these suites, if you go to the pricing, we have an annual 15% discount, and then you put in your code. Oops, you've got to put it in caps, and you apply that, and then you get a ridiculously humongous discount on your annual plan using the QuasiDB. I'll talk about the order book next, and yeah, it's really cool. The SLCs are fantastic, and definitely try and get it in your arsenal. And if you want to use that code, that's great. You get a humongous saving. So it's worth doing, in my opinion. And if not, you can always subscribe to the QuasiDB service where you get the SLCs anyway. But if you want to see them updated in real time, then get the indicators for your MetaTrader 4. And I 100% recommend getting the SLCs. Everything else is kind of like superfluous for what you need, but the SLCs is definitely 100% required, in my opinion. And I'll do a second video, and have a good day, and I'll speak to you soon.